It started like any other evening, the kind where I barely looked up from whatever I was doing. This time, the glow of the TV, a beer half empty on the table. She stood by the front door, wrapping her coat around her shoulders, fixing her hair in the mirror like she always did before heading out. "I won't be too late," she said, her voice light, casual. Too casual. She leaned in, pressing a quick kiss to my cheek, her perfume lingering in the air for just a moment longer than it should have. Then she was gone, the soft click of the door shutting behind her, sounding sharper than usual, like the snap of a thread about to break. I sat there for a few minutes, staring at the screen, but not really watching. Something didn't sit right. I couldn't put my finger on it exactly, but it was there, clawing at the back of my mind. She had been going out more often lately. Not in a way that raised alarms at first, just little things. A dinner here, a girls' night there. But then it became routine, something expected, something that no longer needed an excuse. When had that happened? When had it gone from an occasional outing to a regular part of her week? And then there were the other things. The way she was suddenly so careful with her phone. The way she seemed distracted even when she was home, as if her mind was always somewhere else. The way she had started dressing just a little too nicely for a casual meetup. I had noticed, but I had told myself not to make a big deal out of it. Because that's what trust was, right? Giving someone the benefit of the doubt. But that trust was the thing gnawing at me now. The thing making my hands itch, making me grab my keys without even thinking. I didn't plan to follow her. Not really. But I found myself walking out to my truck anyway, sliding behind the wheel and gripping it tighter than necessary. It was just a drive, I told myself. Just a way to put my mind at ease. Her car was easy to spot, even in the evening traffic. I hung back, not too close, watching as she took a turn, then another. My pulse thumped heavier with each street she crossed, a rhythm I didn't like, a beat that meant something was wrong. And then she stopped. The place wasn't what I expected. No busy bar, no trendy restaurant where she might actually be meeting friends. Instead, it was a small, dimly lit cafe tucked into a quiet street. The kind of place designed for hushed conversations and lingering looks. The kind of place people went when they wanted privacy. I pulled into a spot across the road, killing the engine, my fingers still wrapped around the wheel, my jaw clenched so tight it ached. Inside, through the front window, I could see her, sitting at a table, leaning in just slightly, her expression soft, her lips curved in a smile. Not the polite kind, not the distant, obligatory kind. No, this was the kind of smile that meant something. The kind that belonged to stolen moments and secrets. And then I saw him. The man across from her. He wasn't a stranger, not entirely. I had seen him before, though never like this, never this close to my wife. His hand rested near hers, fingers tapping absently against the table. A lazy, comfortable gesture. Too comfortable. The sight of them together, the way they sat, the way she looked at him, it was like a punch to the gut. A hard, undeniable truth staring me right in the face. Something inside me snapped. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, my grip on the steering wheel turning my knuckles white. My breathing was steady, too steady, like my body was forcing itself into calm before the storm. She wasn't meeting friends. She hadn't been meeting friends for a long time. I could have stormed in right then, could have made a scene, could have dragged her out of that cafe and let her see just how deep this betrayal cut. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there, watching, letting the fire inside me grow. She had no idea I was here. No idea I had seen everything. No idea that everything she had built, everything she thought was safe, was about to come crashing down. And I was going to be the one to bring it all down. I sat in my truck across the street, the engine off, the only sound my own breathing, slow, controlled, but boiling just beneath the surface. The cafe's soft lighting framed them in the window like a portrait, a moment frozen in time that I couldn't unsee. I was gripping the steering wheel so tight my fingers ached, but I didn't loosen my hold. My jaw was clenched so hard I could feel the pressure in my temples. It was anger, pure and simple, but underneath it, something else was churning. Hatred, not just for the man sitting across from her, though there was plenty of that. It wasn't just that he was with my wife. It was the way he looked at her, the casual, easy confidence of a man who thought he had the right. It was the way his hand inched closer to hers on the table, how he leaned in slightly, like they were the only two people in the world. But worse than him, worse than anything, was her. The way she smiled at him. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear, laughing at whatever bullshit he was whispering. The way she let him reach for her hand, didn't pull away, didn't flinch. She had no idea I was here. No idea she was being watched. No idea that I wasn't the man she thought I was anymore. I sat there for what felt like hours, but couldn't have been more than a few minutes, my mind spinning with possibilities. Should I go in there right now? Drag her out by the wrist, make a scene, let everyone see what a liar she was? Should I wait until she got home, act like nothing was wrong, and then let her walk right into the trap of her own making? I wanted to hear her lie. I wanted to hear her excuses, to watch her try to wriggle out of the truth, to see just how far she'd go to protect whatever fantasy she had built for herself. So I sat, and I watched. Every touch, every glance, every detail burned itself into my mind like a brand. And then, finally, they stood up. She smoothed out her dress, adjusting the strap of her purse, smiling up at him. He reached out, fingers grazing her wrist for just a second too long before he turned toward the door. I sank lower in my seat, my hands flexing and unflexing. My chest felt tight, like something was trying to claw its way out of me. She walked out first, her eyes scanning the street for a second, but she wasn't looking for me. She wasn't looking for anything. She was just making sure the coast was clear. She turned toward her car, and he followed, walking with that same careless confidence, like he had nothing to hide, like he wasn't doing anything wrong. And maybe, in his mind, he wasn't. Maybe she had told him something else. Maybe she had made me the bad guy. The thought of it sent another wave of rage through me, a slow, burning kind of anger that settled into my bones. I wanted to follow him. I wanted to know who he was, where he lived, if he had a wife of his own waiting at home, clueless. But no, not yet. I stayed put, my eyes locked on her as she got in her car, started the engine, and pulled away. And then I did the same. I followed at a distance, keeping my truck just far enough behind that she wouldn't notice. She drove home like nothing had happened, like she had just spent the evening chatting with friends, swapping stories over drinks, instead of whatever the hell that was. I pulled in the driveway a few minutes after she did. By the time I walked in, she was in the kitchen, her heels kicked off, humming to herself as she poured a glass of water. She didn't look guilty. She didn't look like a woman who had just spent the night committing the kind of betrayal that couldn't be undone. She looked normal, like my wife, and that, more than anything, made me want to rip this whole illusion apart. But not yet. Not until I could watch her lie to my face. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her. Just watching. She was at the kitchen counter, her back turned to me, pouring herself a glass of water like nothing was wrong. Like she hadn't just come back from sitting across from another man, laughing at his jokes, letting him touch her hand. Like she wasn't a liar. She looked so damn normal. That was the part that got to me. She wasn't acting nervous, wasn't sneaking around. No guilty glances over her shoulder, no hesitation. It was just another night to her. Like this was routine. The thought of that made something inside me snap. If I hadn't followed her, if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, she would have walked into this house, kissed me on the cheek, and curled up next to me on the couch like nothing had happened. Like I was nothing. I took a step forward, slow and deliberate, my boots heavy against the floor. She turned, startled for a split second before she masked it with a smile. "Hey, I didn't hear you come in." She took a sip of her water, completely at ease, like she had no idea I was standing there picturing all the ways I could make her regret every second of this night. I forced myself to stay calm. Not because I wasn't furious. I was. More than furious. But because I wanted to hear it. I wanted to hear the words come out of her mouth. I wanted her to lie to me, to pretend she was still the woman I had married, to see just how deep she would dig her own grave. I walked past her, slow and measured, letting the tension sit in the air. I could feel her watching me, maybe sensing something was off, but not enough to panic. "Good night," I asked, keeping my voice even. She nodded, placing the glass on the counter. "Yeah, it was nice. Just a couple of us catching up. Nothing too exciting." I stared at her. Nothing too exciting. It took everything in me not to laugh, not to slam my fist on the counter and demand to know how she could look me in the eye and say that. Instead, I just nodded. That's good. She moved past me, stretching her arms above her head like she was winding down for the night. You eat dinner? She asked. I grabbed something on the way home, but I could have picked something up for you. So casual. So normal. I wanted to wipe that false sense of comfort right off her face. But not yet. I ate, I muttered. She yawned, heading toward the bedroom. I'm going to take a shower. I smell like a bar. A bar. So that was her story. I wonder how much of it was rehearsed. If she had already run through in her head before she even got home. If she had planned it the second she walked out of that cafe, before she even got behind the wheel. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't nervous because this wasn't her first time lying to me. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment decision, some mistake she had made in a moment of weakness. No, this was practiced, refined, perfected, because she had been doing this for a while. Maybe not with this man, maybe there had been others before him, maybe not, but this wasn't new to her. This wasn't guilt, wasn't hesitation. This was experience. And that realization turned my fury into something else entirely. Something darker. Something sharper. I waited until I heard the shower turn on before I moved. Her purse was on the table, her phone sticking out just enough to see the screen light up as a message came through. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed it. She had a passcode, of course. But she wasn't careful. I had seen her enter it 100 times without thinking, her fingers moving out of habit. And I had a good memory. I entered the numbers, and the screen unlocked. And just like that, the floodgates opened. Messages, calls, photos, all of it, right there, like she hadn't even considered that I might ever look. Like she thought I was too trusting, too stupid, too blind. I scrolled, my hands gripping the phone, so tight my knuckles ached. I had expected a name I didn't recognize. Some random guy, some stranger. But the name on the messages stopped me cold. Because I knew it. It wasn't just some man. It wasn't some stranger. It was someone close. Someone we knew. Someone I never would have suspected. And that changed everything. The second I saw the name on the screen, my stomach dropped. Not in sadness, not in shock. I wasn't that naive anymore. No, what I felt was something colder, something heavier. Like a weight settling deep in my gut, pressing down on every nerve until my hands clenched so hard around her phone, I thought I might crush it. Because this wasn't just some man. It was someone we knew, someone I never would have suspected, someone who had sat in our home, laughed at our table, drank with me, talked with me, someone I had trusted. The messages weren't vague. They weren't careful. They weren't the kind of text you could excuse away with a well-practiced lie. They were bold, shameless. Last night was perfect. I can still feel you. He doesn't suspect a thing, does he? I hate sneaking around. I wish we could just be together. I kept scrolling, my pulse hammering in my ears. I wanted to stop. I wanted to put the phone down before I saw something that would push me past the point of no return. But I couldn't, because I was already there. And then there it was. The final nail in the coffin. A photo. I didn't even need to open it fully. I could see the preview just fine. Her, lying in bed, the sheets barely covering her, her hair a mess, her lips curved in a knowing little smirk. Not our bed, not our sheets. I exhaled, slow and deep, forcing down the burning in my chest. I wasn't stupid. I knew what kind of messages men and women send each other when they were in the middle of an affair. But knowing it in theory and seeing it with my own eyes were two entirely different things. My wife. I let the phone fall back onto the table, my hands gripping the edge so tight my fingers ached. I wasn't sure how long I stood there, staring at nothing, breathing through the kind of rage that most men only ever feel once in their lives. I could hear the water running in the bathroom. She was still in the shower, completely unaware that I had just uncovered every dirty little secret she thought she had hidden. I had two choices. I could storm in there right now, rip back the shower curtain, throw her goddamn phone in her face, and watch the color drain from her lying, cheating skin. Or I could wait. Let her dig herself in deeper. Let her tell me more lies. Let her think she was still in control, that she still had the upper hand, that she was still the clever one in this game she had been playing behind my back. I took another breath, rolling my shoulders, cracking my neck. Yeah, I'd wait. Let her come to me. Let her think everything was fine. And then, I'd burn her world to the ground. The shower stops, the sound of running water cut off. A few seconds later, I heard the soft rustling of a towel, the faint squeak of her feet against the bathroom floor. I turned away from the phone, making my way to the couch, grabbing the remote like nothing had happened. The screen flickered on just as she walked out, her hair damp, skin flushed from the heat of the shower. She was wearing one of my t-shirts, the same way she always did when she was trying to be cute. The sight of her made my skin crawl. She smiled when she saw me. "You're still up?" I shrugged, eyes still on the TV. Couldn't sleep. She walked over, running a hand through her wet hair, then sat beside me, curling up like she always did. "I missed you tonight," she said, resting her head against my shoulder. I had to force myself to stay still, to not shove her off me, to not grab her by the chin and make her look me in the eyes and tell me exactly who she had really been with tonight. Instead, I just let out a low hum. "Yeah." She nodded against me, her fingers tracing lazy patterns on my arm. "MHM. It's weird, you know? Spending time with the girls is nice and all, but I always feel like I just want to come home to you." I nearly laughed. Nearly. I turned my head slightly, looking down at her. "That's so." She met my gaze, eyes soft, warm, the way they had always been, the way they had been when I thought I knew who she really was. And in that moment, I realized something. She was good at this. The lying, the pretending, the effortless way she could look me in the eye and say the words she knew I wanted to hear, knowing damn well she had been wrapped up in another man's arms just hours ago. How many times had she done this before? How many nights had she come home from his bed to lay in mine? I clenched my jaw, looking away, pretending to focus on the TV. She let out a soft sigh, sitting up, stretching. "I think I'm gonna head to bed. You coming?" I shook my head. "Not yet. Gonna finish this first." She hesitated for a second, just a beat too long. "All right, don't stay up too late." Then she stood, walking toward our bedroom, leaving a trail of damp footprints on the floor. I didn't move. Not until I heard the sound of her settling into bed, the soft creak of the mattress as she shifted under the covers. Then I turned the TV off, sat in the dark, and thought about what I was going to do next. Because now, it wasn't just about her. Now there was someone else. Someone who thought he had taken something from me. Someone who thought he had gotten away with it. Someone who was about to learn exactly what kind of man I really was. I sat in the dark long after she had gone to bed. The house was quiet, the only sound the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant ticking of the clock on the wall. Outside, a car passed down the street, its headlights flashing briefly against the curtains before disappearing. I was still gripping the remote in my hand, but I hadn't turned the TV back on. I wasn't watching anything. I was thinking. I'd spent years building this life with her, believing in something that had never been real. Every moment, every kiss, every whispered "I love you," all of it had been tainted, poisoned by whatever the hell she had been doing behind my back. And I had been blind, but not anymore. The moment I saw that name on her phone, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just a husband who had been betrayed. I wasn't just a man who had been made a fool of. I was something else now, something worse. And the only thing that mattered now was what I was going to do about it. I reached for her phone again, the glow of the screen casting sharp shadows across my face. I didn't need to scroll anymore. I already knew everything I needed to know. Him. I stared at his name, my jaw tightening. This wasn't some random guy. This wasn't a mistake. This was personal. He had sat across from me at dinner. He had laughed at my jokes, slapped me on the back, poured drinks with me. I had trusted him. And the whole time, he had been looking at my wife like she was his to take. I exhaled slowly, setting the phone down before I crushed in my hand. I needed a plan. I finally stood, stretching out the stiffness in my back, moving like a man who wasn't supposed to be awake at this hour. The house felt different now, like a crime scene. I made my way to the bedroom. The door was slightly open, the soft glow of the bedside lamp casting a dim light across the sheets. She was already asleep. I stopped in the doorway, watching her. She looked peaceful, too peaceful, like she hadn't just spent the night pretending to be something she wasn't, like she hadn't come home to me after being with him. Something about that made my skin crawl. I want to wake her up. I wanted to rip the blanket off of her and watch the panic settle into her face was she realized what I knew. I wanted to see her stammer, grasp for excuses, try to save herself. But not yet. I took a slow breath, pushing the anger down. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of knowing what was coming. She would wake up in the morning, stretch, yawn, smile at me like nothing was wrong. She'd move through the day without a care in the world, thinking she was safe. And that was exactly what I wanted. Let her have that illusion. For now, I climbed into bed beside her, the mattress shifting slightly under my weight. She stirred for a moment, then turned toward me, her arm draping lazily across my chest. I didn't move, didn't touch her, didn't breathe. I just laid there, staring at the ceiling, my mind running through every possible way I could tear her world apart. Morning comes with smiles and lies. The next morning, I woke up before she did. I never used to. I was the kind of guy who liked to sleep in when I could, let the world wake up before I did. Not today. I needed to see it. I needed to see how she would lie to me. She shifted beside me, stretching her arms before rolling onto her side with a sleepy smile. "Morning," she murmured, her voice soft, affectionate. I forced a smile back. "Morning." She nestled against me for a moment before finally sitting up, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. "You okay? You were tossing a lot last night." I let out a breath, running a hand through my hair like I had nothing to hide. "Yeah, just had trouble sleeping." She frowned, concerned. "Stress." I almost laughed. Stress. That was what she thought was wrong. If only she knew. I shrugged, keeping my expression neutral. "Something like that." She leaned in, pressing a quick kiss to my cheek. "You should take it easy today. Take it easy." My wife, who had spent last night in another man's arms, was giving me advice. I nodded, playing along. "Yeah, maybe I will." She stretched again before sliding out of bed. "I'm gonna hop in the shower." I watched as she disappeared into the bathroom, humming to herself, moving through the morning like nothing had changed, like she hadn't shattered our life into a million pieces. I sat up slowly, my fingers pressing against my temples as I let out a slow breath. I could end this right now. Walk into that bathroom, throw her phone at her, and demand the truth. But I didn't want the truth. I already had it. What I wanted was revenge. And I was going to get it. Step 1. Set the trap. I had to play it smart. Clever. If I acted too soon, she'd try to cover her tracks. She'd cry, apologize, spin whatever story she thought might keep her safe. But I didn't want an apology. I wanted justice. So I did what I had never done before. I picked up my phone and sent her a message. "Hey, babe. Thinking we should do something special tonight. Just us. What do you think? A test." She would say yes, of course, because that's what a good wife would do. But I knew she already had plans. Plans she would have to change now. I sent the message and waited. Less than a minute later, her phone, still on the nightstand, buzzed with an incoming text. I glanced at the screen. It was him. And just like that, I had her trapped. She was going to have to choose. And no matter which choice she made, I was going to make sure she lost everything. I sat there, phone in my hand, watching as her phone buzzed again on the nightstand. Another message from him. I didn't touch it this time. Didn't need to. I already knew what it would say. Something simple. Something careful. Maybe, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Same place. Miss you already." The kind of messages men send when they think they've won. I could hear the water running in the shower. She was in there right now, washing away the smell of him, scrubbing her skin clean like it would somehow erase the betrayal she carried underneath it. I leaned back, exhaling slowly, feeling the weight of everything settle onto my chest. She had a choice to make now. I had sent her that text before she saw his, which meant that when she stepped out of that shower, wrapped in a towel, running her fingers through her wet hair, she would see my message first. "Hey, babe, thinking we should do something special tonight. Just us. What do you think?" A simple question, one that any good wife would say yes to without hesitation. Except she wasn't a good wife. She was a liar, a cheater, and now I was going to see exactly how she handled it. Watching her decide, the water stopped. I heard her moving around, opening drawers, getting dressed. A few minutes later, she walked out, toweling off her hair, her phone in one hand. I didn't move, didn't look at her, just sat there, eyes on the TV, pretending to be caught up in the morning news like I wasn't waiting for the moment her world started to crumble. She didn't check her phone right away. She was comfortable. That's what got me the most. She had gotten away with it for so long that she wasn't even nervous. She moved around the room like a woman who had nothing to hide, humming softly as she pulled on a shirt. Then finally, she picked up her phone. I kept my gaze locked on the screen, watching her out of the corner of my eye. She swiped it open, saw my message first, paused. It was subtle, but I caught it. That half-second hesitation where she realized she now had a problem. Then she kept scrolling, saw his message next. Another pause, longer this time. She stood there, her body completely still, phone in her hands, staring at whatever the hell he had sent her. I could almost hear her thoughts. What do I do? How do I answer? How do I fix this? I almost smiled. This was the first time she had felt even an ounce of what I'd felt last night. I didn't say anything, just waited for her next move. The lies begin. She put her phone down gently, walking toward the closet. Then, in the most casual voice possible, she said, I was actually thinking of going out with the girls again tonight. I felt something sharp twist in my gut, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I finally turned to her, raising an eyebrow. Oh yeah. She nodded, pulling a sweater off a hanger. Yeah, just a little dinner. You don't mind, do you? A test. She was watching me now, studying me, trying to gauge my reaction, trying to see if I had any reason to doubt her. If I had seen anything. If I knew. I played it cool. Shrugged, pretending I didn't care. No, that's fine. I'll just order in or something. A flicker of relief crossed her face so fast most men wouldn't have noticed it. But I did. I noticed everything now. I had learned. She turned back to her phone, picking it up again. Actually, maybe I'll just stay home tonight. We can do something together, like you said. And there it was. She had made her choice. She was going to cancel on him. I wondered how she would word it. Would she make up an excuse? Tell him she wasn't feeling well? Say something came up? I wanted to see it. I wanted to see her type the message, see the exact words she chose when she threw him aside for me. I stood up, stretching. I'm going to grab some coffee. She smiled at me. Okay, babe. Babe. The same word she probably used for him. I walked out of the bedroom, heading toward the kitchen, but I didn't go straight to the coffee maker. I stopped just outside the door, just out her sight, listening. And then I heard it, the soft sound of her phone tapping as she typed. A few seconds passed. Then, the whoosh of a sent message. I exhaled slow and deep. She had lied to him now, too. Good. That was step one. Step two, setting the fire. I waited a few more minutes before heading back in, coffee cup in hand, acting like I hadn't just heard her cover her tracks. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, still looking at her phone, her face neutral, her fingers moving like she was replying to other messages. Maybe she was even messaging him again, reassuring him, making promises for later. I would find out soon enough. I sat down beside her, taking a slow sip. She glanced up at me, smiling like she wasn't the world's best liar. So, what are we doing tonight? I smiled back. A real smile. One she didn't recognize. Something special, I said. She grinned. Oh, like what? I shrugged. It's a surprise. It was because tonight, everything she thought she knew about me, about us, about the life she had been living, was about to change. The rest of the day passed like a dream I wasn't really inside of. I watched her move through our house, responding to texts, laughing at things on her phone, scrolling through whatever she was pretending was important. She had no idea that every step she took, every breath she exhaled, every lie she told so effortlessly was leading her straight to the fire I was about to set. I played the role perfectly. I was the loving husband, the clueless man who just wanted to have a special night with his wife. I smiled when she spoke, laughed when she cracked jokes, let her kiss my cheek like it didn't make my skin crawl. She thought she had gotten away with it. She thought she was safe. But tonight, she would learn exactly what it felt like to have everything ripped away in an instant. The final confirmation. I needed one more thing before the night could begin. Proof. Not for me. I already knew what kind of woman I had married. But I wanted something tangible. Something undeniable. So while she was in the shower, I did something I had never done before. I picked up her phone, unlocked it, and this time, I didn't just skim through her messages. I went deep. It didn't take long to find exactly what I was looking for. Texts. Hundreds of them. Late-night conversations, hidden inside the message thread with his name at the top. Plans made in secret. Whispered promises she had no intention of keeping. And pictures. Not just of her. Of him. I stared at his face, at the smug, lazy grin, the way he looked at my wife like she belonged to him. Like I was nothing. I took screenshots of everything. Every text, every picture, every disgusting little secret they thought they had hidden. Then I sent them to myself. The evidence was mine now. And tonight, I would use it. The setup. By the time she stepped out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around her, hair damp and smelling like lavender, I was already in the kitchen, pretending to be busy. She walked up behind me, draping her arms around my waist, pressing a kiss to my shoulder. "What's the plan?" she murmured. I turned, giving her that same easy smile I had mastered over the past 24 hours. "You'll see." She grinned, eyes shining like she really believed this was some kind of romantic surprise. If only she knew. I had already made the reservations. A small, cozy restaurant tucked away from the main streets. The kind of place meant for intimate moments. I had picked it on purpose, because I wanted her to feel safe. I wanted her to relax. I wanted her to think this was just another night, another game she was playing, another lie she was getting away with. And then, when she least expected it, I was going to shatter everything. Dinner with the enemy. She dressed up, put on a black dress that hugged her just right, painted her lips red, curled her hair like she wanted to impress someone. It made me sick. I had seen this exact look before. Not for me. For him. But tonight, she had no idea who she was really dressing for. The drive to the restaurant was normal. Light conversation, small talk, laughter. She talked about her day, about things that didn't matter. She was comfortable. She was stupid. When we arrived, I pulled out her chair, let her sit first, ordered her favorite wine before she even had a chance to glance at the menu. She smiled at me across the table, resting her chin on her hand. "You're in a good mood tonight." I shrugged, just happy to be with you. It was the easiest lie I had ever told. She reached for my hand across the table, lacing her fingers through mine. Me too. I almost laughed. Almost. Because I knew what was coming next. And she didn't. The moment it all broke. I waited. Let her sip her wine. Let her enjoy her meal. Let her bask in the glow of what she thought was another normal night in her perfect little life. Then, when she was at her most relaxed, I pulled out my phone, clicked on the folder I had created, slid it across the table. Her face shifted instantly. I didn't say a word, just watched. She stared down at the screen, her lips parting slightly, her breath catching in her throat. I saw the exact second she realized what she was looking at. A photo of her. Not just any photo. The photo. The one she had sent to him. In his bed. My wife, tangled in sheets that weren't ours, her lips curved in a knowing, wicked little smirk. And below it, the texts. Line after line of every lie she had ever told me. Her face drained of color. She swallowed hard, fingers trembling as she reached for the phone, scrolling through the proof of her own betrayal. And then, finally, she looked up at me. Her eyes were wide, glassy, terrified. I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Got anything to say?" She opened her mouth, closed it, swallowed again, and then, like I knew she would, she tried to lie. This isn't what it looks like." I laughed. Actually laughed. "You sure about that?" I asked, tilting my head. "Because it looks a hell of a lot like my wife in another man's bed." She shook her head, desperate now, reaching for my hand. "Baby, please, I can explain." I pulled away so fast she flinched. "Explain what exactly?" My voice was calm, colder than I had ever heard it before. "Explain how long you've been screwing my friend behind my back. Explain how many times you've come home to me after being with him." She was shaking now. It didn't mean anything. I slammed my hand on the table, making the silverware rattle. "Don't lie to me." She jumped, eyes filling with tears, chest rising and falling in short, panicked breaths. Good. Let her feel what I'd felt. Let her know what it was like to have the floor ripped out from under her, to feel like everything she knew was gone. I stood, tossing a few bills onto the table. Then I looked at her one last time and said the words she would never forget. "You're not my wife anymore." Then I walked out, and I didn't look back.